Hit the wrong button, Matt, and I am so excited for this card. UFC 255 coming up tonight, and I mean, Matt, how could you not be excited for this card? We have two title fights up at the top at 125-pound Shevchenko, Maia. You also have Davison Figueiredo looking to defend his belt for the first time, but really, I mean, he missed weight. So, yeah, it is the first time. Taking on Alex Perez. And hey, Matt, Fight Night picks wouldn't be possible without our friends over at ringsidebeerstore.com. Make sure you check them out. ringsidebeerstore.com. And for Fight Night picks fans only, use that promo code FNP. You're going to save 25% off your order today. I got a couple of their awesome tap handles. Look at that. Ringside Beer Store, Ringside MMA, Ringside Beer. We got the boxing tap handle. Cool stuff over there, so make sure you check it out. ringsidebeerstore.com, Matt. Without further ado, let's move the chains. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it. And thanks for joining us this Saturday for Fight Night Picks Kicks. And hey, maybe you didn't know it, but Fight Night Picks, we have a website, fightnightpicks.net. So make sure you check it out. If you missed some of the YouTube content, it's over there. And hey, maybe you don't have enough time to watch some of our shows on YouTube. We also have the various Fight Night Picks podcasts featured on the site, as well as iTunes and Spotify, the latest episodes of Early Stoppage, and the predictions, and soon to be a recap show. And the other way that you can support the boys, check out the store. We got some awesome shirts and hats over there. FightNightPicks.net. I mean, hey, who doesn't need a long sleeve shirt? A couple t-shirts. Maybe you're lacking. Maybe you need to add to the wardrobe. Or maybe you need to check out that Fight Night Picks Under Armour cap. Did I take that picture myself and Photoshop it? You're darn tootin' I did. So check it out, FightNightPicks.net. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Oh boy, Matt, what can I say? We've got a great card coming up tonight, and we appreciate everybody for getting into it. I mean, holy smokes, we've already got 352 people out there watching. There's only 54 likes, so if you could toss us a like, if you could toss us a sub, if you're not already subscribed, I have to say, and I said it from the start, we're moving the chains. There's a lot more people that are subscribed and tuning in than were a week or two ago. So those percentages are changing. I check in on those a lot, and I really do appreciate everybody for tuning in. Drew liked my You're Darn Tootin'. And SAPT did as well. Branch Above hanging out as you are every single week. And Boost for Snooch, I saw you up there with a $5 super chat. We appreciate you. That chat is about to go absolutely insane. It's already moving really quick. Who did the thumbs down, Booch, for Snooch? I couldn't tell you. But if you can toss us a like, we do appreciate it. Now, Matt, we have a great card. And as we always do with Fight Night Picks, we go off of the predictions that have been made. They're down there at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. I'm going to be referencing them the entire show. We just throw out Tapology, have fun on our own, and really look forward to this one. Mojo HD saying, this Perry fight, what's the call now? I'm not changing my picks, so there's that. But overall, I'm really looking forward to this one. And Matt, you know, in times past when you have a couple of title fights that are headlined by flyweights, maybe you're not all that interested in it. But Figueiredo taking on Perez and Valentina Shevchenko, Jennifer Maia are definitely some pretty good fights to have up at the top. We've got the $9.99 super chat from Russia Zone. It could happen. Thank 21. You. Piotr Jan's #1 fan. But the boys are here as well. Branch Above likes the shout out. David Moore here saying, let's get into it. And Akash Deep helping us along the way. So, Matt, let's get down and dirty. We'll talk fight of the night before we talk picks, but we appreciate Mr. Luxury in the super chat. Big fights tonight, guys. Excited to sit back and pop some popcorn and get big money on Royval tonight. Let's get into it. Pip to doodly do. 100% chance. Booch for Snooch asking about Perez, and Charles saying, hey guys. So Matt, let's get into our fight of the night screen, and we can finally talk about two really big fights. You have Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, taking on Locomotivo, Nicholas Dalby. Now Matt, Nicholas Dalby's former opponent, it was after we had already filmed the video. So we filmed this prediction, both went with D-Rod. I'll put that out there right now. We both went with D-Rod as my hand makes it over to Matt's screen. And we talked about Nicholas Dalby, the fact that he lost that fight against Ronson. Ronson came in on short notice, and then we stopped filming. We put the videos up. And then Jesse Ronson, suspended for 20 months by USADA. Yeah. Failed that USADA test. Baza Rafael hitting us with €5. Keep it up. We appreciate you as well. Who else have we got? The Tomb Dog hanging out as well. But overall, this fight, possible fight of the night, Nicholas Dalby, was it an anomaly that he lost in his last fight? Because his chin's held up before. It didn't in that fight against Jesse Ronson. Daniel Rodriguez in his last fight with Dwight Grant, his chin almost evaded him, but Chris Tognoni said, no dice, sir, and let that fight continue on. Daniel Rodriguez coming back to rock Grant, finish the fight. It was an awesome one. I'm really looking forward to this one now.
100%. Daniel Rodriguez has absolute bricks in his hands, and if anyone's set to kind of face that sort of an opponent, Nicholas Dalby's the guy. Tough as really anyone on the UFC roster. Really good cardio, and a great guy to match up against Daniel Rodriguez, because you know what you're going to get from Nicholas Dalby. The shortcomings we've seen from Daniel Rodriguez are, well, his cardio's not phenomenal. He just kind of get tired, but if he can knock you out in the first minute and a half, it's going to be wild. So Nicholas Dalby, kind of a perfect test for Daniel Rodriguez, because if you beat if you beat Nicholas Dalby, it's just kind of a big name that can really set you up to the future. So I'm very excited for this fight.
Ocean hitting us up in the super chat. Let's get into it. Hashtag Free Craig. We appreciate you.
Awesome.
Holy
Thank you,
smokes.
guys.
We got to really give you a shout out there. Okines27, you guys are awesome. Something you always wanted to do is a YouTube page, and you find out that we're in a neighboring province. Hey, Nova Scotia, shout out to you as well. Branch above having a say. Now, Matt, this is my pick for fight of the night. Sorry, this was my pick for fight of the night.
I was going to say,
You've got Moreno Royval, and Matt, you couldn't go wrong with either one of these. I really think that this is probably the fight that's going to win that bonus, but Brandon Moreno, the Assassin Baby, really probably deserved the title shot in the main event, but he gets that prelim main event slot against Brandon Royval. And Matt, Factory X's Royval is really firing on all cylinders. 2 huge wins in his UFC debut, one against Tim Elliott, the next one against Kai Kara-France. Amazing fight there for Brandon Moreno on a tidy little win streak. He was originally supposed to take on Perez. Now he gets Royval. What do you think of this one?
This fight is amazing on so many levels, because you know that no matter where the fight takes place, both guys are going to be competitive in it. We see this a lot in MMA where Royval might be the better grappler, but Moreno might be the better striker. Not really. I mean, if you look at both these guys' records, especially in the breakdown, yes, they both have a lot more submission wins, but I don't think that does justice to how good of strikers both these guys are. I mean, Brandon Moreno has really shown that improvement after he came back into the UFC, especially. I mean, that loss to Sergio Pettis and losing to Alejandro Pantoja. Not the best looks, but of course won the LFA flyweight title, came back to the UFC, and he's been on an absolute tear. The Askarov draw notwithstanding, I mean, he's looked really, really good, and the striking has been the thing that's made the big improvement. We all know how good his grappling is, how good his scrambles are, but it was sort of the question marks around his striking. Now he throws that really nice 1-2 left high kick. He's got a lot of good combinations, and he doesn't get tired, so that's really exciting for Brandon Moreno. Brandon Royval, I've said this 1,000 times. People are probably getting sick of me comparing him to this guy. Brandon Royval fights a lot like Charles Oliveira. Now, I don't think he's as good as Charles Oliveira, because I think very highly of Oliveira. But Brandon Royval, phenomenal jiu-jitsu. Second to none, really, especially in this division. Really good jiu-jitsu. And on the feet, he has sort of a weird power for 125, because he fights... His strikes look like Kevin Holland's. He throws, he hits you right at the end of them. And if he catches you, be that elbows, be that straight punches, he can put you down. So I think this is a phenomenal fight, just because there's so many different outcomes that we can get from it.
I think this is going to be a really good one as well. And Matt, as we always do with Fight Night Picks, just as a recap, I'm going to be tossing out those Fight Night Picks predictions over on Instagram. I see we need 90% hitting us up in the chat. We will see. We will see how these picks are going to go. And if we decided to change anything, especially after weigh-ins, I know the question was out there about Mike Perry. That is a dicey one. I know the odds right now are basically a par between Means and Perry. Obviously, Means missing weight by, count them, 4.5 pounds. Not good. Sorry, it was 4 at 175. So, Matt, let's start at the bottom of this card. We've got Louis Cosce taking on Sasha Palatnikov. And, Matt, overall... This fight was one where I saw it being fairly close. I went and looked at the Tapology votes before this one, and I was really surprised. I said I wouldn't do it, but 94% of voters going with Cosce, 6% going with Palatnikov. Matt, if we have a look over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 92% going Cosce, 8% going with Sasha Palatnikov. This is one of those weird fights because Louis Cosce has a ton of power. He will get hit. Sasha Palatnikov moves in and out really well, throws a nice whipping low kick, but he has a tendency to get hit as well by some lesser fighters, and we've seen it on some of those regional scenes. Now, I know Sasha Palatnikov has that loss by finish on his record to Munir Lazez. He's a guy that's training out of Syndicate MMA, which is definitely a good gym that you want to be out of. Again, representing Hong Kong. Chris Thompson hitting us up in the super chat with the $20.99. Good luck tonight, guys. Need a big night after last week at MMA Hypothesis. And I mean, Matt, we had a decent week, and I know Booch for Snooch and a couple people, Dimitri, kind of talking about it. Question mark kicks that we had on Wednesday night for Bellator 253. There were 9 total fights. We had picks on 8 of them. We went 6-2. We picked the underdog in the main event. That definitely didn't work out. I mean, hey, how about AJ McKee with that sub? Yeah. Yoink. And then had Baby Slice, but he just wasn't rearing to go. So that was kind of a weird fight. But overall in this one, Matt, Louis Cosce taking on Sasha Palatnikov. Are you thinking anything different about this fight than you were at the start of the week?
You set this up perfectly. Sasha Palatnikov, he is a decent striker. He has good movement, but the movement does start to slow down as the fight progresses, and he is hittable. And being hittable is not an attribute that you want to have when you're fighting a guy like Louis Cosce. You might not be overly familiar with him yet, but when he does hit things, they tend to fall. And with Louis Cosce, he is a really exciting prospect right now, and I do think he'll be able to get it done. I think this is an entertaining fight. I think we're going to learn a lot from both guys throughout, but I think Louis Cosce's probably got this one in the bag.
I do too, and I mean, I look at this fight, if we have a look at the odds just quickly over on Best Fight Odds, Louis Cosce is the 4th biggest mover on the card at 35%. His line opened at a minus 365. He's now at a minus 556. I'm not going to change my pick on this one. Again, this is one of those fights. You're starting off the card. This is a pop and popcorn type of fight as I miss with the pop.
Getting into the props early.
We'll eat the popcorn. Yeah. It's a pop and popcorn type of fight. Louis Cosce taking on Sasha Palatnikov. Both of us going with Louis Cosce. So, Matt, move into our next fight. Kyle Daukaus taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Matt, I'm still going hard on the accent for Dustin Stoltzfus. Fighting out of Pennsylvania, training out of Germany, and this is a guy that has plenty of finished wins on his record at 13-1, taking on another Pennsylvania boy in the other Daukaus brother. What do you make of this fight here?
This is a super fun fight because you know both guys, the grappling credentials. Kyle Daukaus, phenomenal on the ground, really good on the feet too, and I do think the striking's been the part that we've seen the improvement the most throughout his UFC career. Dustin Stoltzfus, though, his kicks are phenomenal, and he is so good at jiu-jitsu that it's not really that big of a deal because he is going to throw those kicks with reckless abandon, and he could put 100% behind everything because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's going to get taken down. He'll do his job for him. The weird thing about Dustin, though, is when he does throw those big kicks, he can get caught clean, and that's when the boxing of Kyle Daukaus is really going to play dividends in this fight because for Stoltzfus to get inside and to try to, take him down and employ his own wrestling game, I don't really know if he'll be able to against Daukaus because Daukaus definitely has the edge in the wrestling between these two guys. So if Dustin's just stuck standing on the feet against Kyle Daukaus, I don't really like his chances. I know the kicks are going to start to accumulate over time, but I do think he's going to get hit clean quite a bit throughout this fight. He's not a bad underdog pick by any means because the odds are quite apart on these two, but Kyle Daukaus is just a little bit more well-rounded, and if the fight does go to the ground, which is Stoltzfus kind of... it's his expertise, if you will. I do think Kyle Daukaus, at least defensively, will be good enough to make it back up to his feet.
Matt, Kyle Daukaus, the 2nd biggest mover this week at 52%. His line open minus 151. Wow. He's now minus 320 favorite for Stoltzfus, open a plus 126. He's now at a plus 251, which, as I choke on my popcorn, was a little bit of a surprise to me. Now, I had Dustin Stoltzfus at the start of the week. This is a really tough one, and I mean, hey, maybe there's some sexy picks for underdogs. This, to me, is mine with Dustin Stoltzfus. Now, in all honesty, out of those weeks where, I mean, you had a 9-1 week, you had what, like an 8-2 week and an 11-0 week before last week. And again, I get the trophy back, but last week wasn't a good week for either of the brothers. You went 4-5, I went 5-4, so this trophy I don't want to break it, so I won't throw it. But overall, it wasn't a good week last week. However, like I said, Wednesday was 6-2 was fine with me. Now, I know it busted a couple of parlays, but still, it felt decent. I'm still going with Dustin Stoltzfus. From what I've seen, I really like his striking. He throws mean hooks. He throws a lot of power on all of his shots. He's one of those guys that won't kind of explode with a lot of volume, but he will, especially with the power on his strikes. He throws a nice kick as well. And I do like Dustin Stoltzfus in this fight, so we're going to disagree.
I agree with what you're saying. It's just the problem is he needs to wind up to land a lot of those things, whereas Kyle Daukaus can just jab, and move throughout 3 rounds. So it's not that I'm against your pick. I just still have it for Daukaus.
All right, Matt. So you're going with Daukaus. I'm going with Dustin Stoltzfus. And again, if I have a look over on the Instagrams, 326 total votes for Daukaus to 143 for Stoltzfus. That's about a 70-30 split. Morgan Branch, friend of the show, pumped for your FNP merch to arrive. The Santa Expedite packages. If you order your Fight Night Picks merch, I always send it air tracked, always, every single time. I send it to the States that way. I just sent a few parcels to Australia that way. It came out of my pocket to send it that way because it's like $45. But overall, I like doing it that way. You get it as quick as possible. It's 3 to 4 weeks to get to Australia. Full transparency there. But we move on, and we have Alan Jouban taking on Jared Gooden, the Night Train. And Matt, I really do like this fight. I think it could go either way. This is another one, if you're just tossing it up, it's a pop and popcorn type of fight because Alan Jouban's been out for about a year and a half. Jared Gooden has been very, very active. I've seen that line move throughout the week. We're getting close to a pick'em type of approach here. If you have a look at Jared Gooden, let's bring it up now because we're talking about it. Plus 125. The line dropped. They became about pick'em, and then a lot of money's come in on Jouban. So Gooden went from on Sunday to a minus 105. He's now plus 125 once again. For Alan Jouban, he's about a minus 150 average. So Matt, have your thoughts changed at all on this one? I know we kind of talked about at the start of the week that it is a very close fight, and there's 2 Alan Joubans that could show up here.
Exactly, and that's the problem. So with Jared Gooden, I know what version's going to show. Does he hit hard? Extremely. Is he hittable, though? Extremely. And it's kind of that double-edged sword. If you're going to be that guy who loads up on all of his punches, and if you hit the person, yeah, they get knocked out, but it leaves you really open. So I think Alan Jouban's going to win this fight, but let me preface it by this. The best version of Alan Jouban destroys Jared Gooden. Like, I don't really see it being close. The Muay Thai of Jouban, it would just give Gooden a lot of problems, especially in the clinch with the back into the cage. I don't know if we're going to get that version of Alan Jouban. I'm still going to trust that an older Alan Jouban can fight like he used to, really employ his Muay Thai, some really nice low calf kicks, and be able to win a fight. But the Jared Gooden question mark, it is kind of weird because Alan Jouban's been able to get caught early in fights. The Nico Price fight's a really good example of that. I don't see Jared Gooden being on the level of a Nico Price, though, so I do still have Alan Jouban. But this is an interesting fight because if Jouban's done, like, if Jouban loses this fight, I don't really see him continuing in the UFC. Just he is a little bit older. I don't really see him getting on that title path, and he does seem like a guy who, you know, he wants to move up the ranks, be that realistic or not at this stage of his career. But yes, I still have Alan Jouban.
And I mean, most people going with the approach that this is also a pop and popcorn fight. To me, it was too, because the odds were close. It's one of those ones where they want to reel you in. You know, watching Jared Gooden tape, there's a lot to like. I mean, he's got a lot of finishes on his record. You look at it, 17-4 coming into the UFC. We always like to see a lot of experience before you're coming in. He's one of those guys that has it. But just some of the fights really kind of scare me off of feeling confident in picking Jared Gooden. I know he has a lot of power on the feet. I 100% wouldn't be surprised if Jared Gooden won this fight, which, you know, lends credence to it being a pop and popcorn type for me. The votes on Tapology, 51% to 49%. In favor of Gooden, and that's out of 2,900 total votes. The votes over on Fight Night Picks, so you can see them. 61% have Jouban to 39% that have Jared Gooden. So, again, it's close either way. Tapology, like, just about dead even. I'm going with Jouban. It's not one of the most confident picks on there. I know Higgy, too, says Gooden has it, and you're a fairly reliable source. They have the dude kind of offering up his take. And what else have we got? SR being a dink. Thanks there, you dingus. Branch above saying it's pop and popcorn for me. So, yeah, going with Jouban ever so slightly, but overall, it should be a really good fight. And then we move into one of our possible fights of the nights. Now, Matt, we already kind of talked about this one, the fact that we've got Dana Rodriguez on this tidy little win streak since he's came into the UFC. Had some nice wins coming in, and then that Dwight Grant really putting a statement on it this summer. You got Nicholas Dalby coming off a loss. Before that, it was a win over a decent opponent in Alex Oliveira. What's your take on this fight as far as a pick, and has it changed whatsoever during the week?
So again, I think we've talked about this fight quite a bit, so it's hard to offer any more analysis than we already have, but it comes down to this. Can Nicholas Dalby get past the road bump, if you will, or can he at least weather the storm that Dana Rodriguez is going to bring? Because Dana Rodriguez, in that first 2-3 minute stretch, he will throw with reckless abandon. And he does leave himself open a little bit when he does that. The Dwight Grant fight is a perfect example. He goes to throw this like massive right shovel hook, and Dwight Grant catches him while he's kind of leaning forward. Can Nicholas Dalby do that? Of course he can. I don't really think Nicholas Dalby has the, one-punch power of a Dwight Grant, and he definitely doesn't have the speed that Grant has. Grant's career has been up and down in the UFC, but I think if Daniel Rodriguez goes out there, even with that, I'm just going to swing for the fences attitude, I think he'll eventually catch Nicholas Dalby. It's unfortunate to say, but Dalby's not the most elusive guy, and it's not like he's going to go out there and wrestle you, really make you tired and then take advantage. He can play that game, but if you're a primary striker, he's more than happy to stand on the feet with you. So I do think Daniel Rodriguez has got this.
Sean McMinn, we appreciate you in the
Thank you.
super chat. And Musty, I gotta kind of just pump the brakes a little bit. D-Rod's so good. Wait, he's just going to be a top guy one day. He gets clocked. He eats a lot. Gabe Green made his fight with Daniel Rodriguez competitive. Gabe Green. Now, kudos to Gabe Green. He made the fight competitive. Dwight Grant also hit him with all he had and pretty much had him finished. Most referees would have stopped that fight. Chris Tognoni, he's a real dude. He didn't want it to end. So,
Just bleed. If
we look at the odds, Daniel Rodriguez open a minus 230. He's now a minus 334. That line's moved about 31%. For Nicholas Dalby, open a plus 195, now at a plus 260. Over on best fight odds, Matt, again, this is one of those ones that I called it a fight of the night, and I was quite confident in Daniel Rodriguez. Over at Fight Night Picks, 82% of voters going with Rodriguez, 18% going Dalby. So, I mean, it doesn't really seem all that close. Garrett makes a really good point. D-Rod gets sloppy late, and he gets tired. You never know. Nicholas Dalby, decent pretty well everywhere. We just kind of saw a weird fight out of him in that Ronson fight.
Not really just the Ronson fight. Like, Nicholas Dalby takes a lot of damage in all of his fights. And is Daniel Rodriguez really the guy you want to test your durability against? I don't really think so. So that's why this pick's such an easy one for me.
All right, Matt. So we both have Daniel Rodriguez in this fight. We move on to the first of two Shevchenkos on the same card. It's got to be weird for Valentina having Antonina on the prelims. David's hanging out. Greetings from Spain. Great channel.
What's up,
Jack
guys?
Lawson. Pop and popcorn type of fight. The boys have the popcorn. Will I throw it this week? Maybe I will. But
Possibly.
we look at this fight. Antonina Shevchenko taking on Ariane Lipski. We differed on this one. Lipski the
Quite
last
heavily.
one.
Let's just be honest. Craig and I argued about this before we started filming for a while. And let's just be honest. I don't know how Antonina Shevchenko loses this fight, and Craig feels very strongly the other way with Ariane Lipski. So we'll just let you know we're that divided on this fight, so it's really hard to get a solid analysis.
So we'll give you the picks from at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. 282 total votes for Lipski to 222 for Antonina. So the Fight Night Picks pick'em team, I guess, are going with Lipski. The odds favor Antonina Shevchenko. She opened a minus 109. The line dropped. She got down to a minus 168. And then it popped right back up like in the last day or so. She's a minus 137. So the late money coming in on Lipski, who opened a minus 110. She's now at a plus 113. Does any of this make you change your mind?
Not at all. And this fight comes down to two things. Again, we talk about this a lot. If Shevchenko can keep this fight on the feet, it will not be close. Ariane Lipski has better striking, I'll say. She is starting to improve, but she's not going to go out there and outstrike Antonina Shevchenko for 3 rounds. But it's the exact opposite. If Ariane Lipski can take down Antonina and really control her on the ground, I think she can win rounds. The big issue is Ariane Lipski's landed 1 takedown in her UFC career, and I don't know if that's enough for me to be so confident in her to beat Antonina Shevchenko. Now, I wouldn't put money on either one of these two. I don't care how strongly you feel towards either one. It is that much of a toss-up. But I do think if Antonina can just defend a few takedowns, keep the fight on the feet, she has good low kicks of her own. It's not something we see a lot in the female flyweight division, but she is someone who will invest in that calf kick early and keep it going throughout the fight. I do think that's going to be a big advantage for her. But again, if Lipski can take her down, I'm not going to say she drops her, but let's say she drops her and gets full mount or something. She can do a lot of damage and have a lot of success. I just don't know how she gets the fight to the ground.
Mitchell Williams, if you're the same Mitchell Williams from Twitter, how's it going? You're saying stay away from this fight.
Yeah.
We also have the super chat from Kenny Perrin. Appreciate you in the super chat, and be sure to toss the like onto the video. We appreciate you.
Thank all you guys.
All right, so we look at this fight, and again, yeah, that's why it's so tough, because for Ariane Lipski in her last fight, she looked great against Luana Carolina. She had that crazy submission. It was one of those things that we wanted. We were finally waiting to see it out of Ariane Lipski. And in the fights that she's had so far in the UFC, it's not like they hand-fed her any opponent. She faced really good competition. You look at the win that she had in KSW, 6-1, Silvana Gomez Juarez, and then she loses to Calderwood. She loses to Molly McCann. She beats Isabella De Padua in a fight that was way too close. Short notice De Padua. and then finishes Luana Carolina, which I really did like. Now, if we head on through the chat, Jake Allen hanging out. Now, Jake, I know that you're not now Montreal Canadiens goaltender Jake Allen, who's also from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, but we appreciate you all the same. We've got Flexen for Antonina. It seems like this one's tough for a lot of people to try and pick, and it's tough for us too. I'm not going to change on my pick of Ariane Lipski, but again, this is as much of a pop and popcorn type of fight as there is out there. I would not feel overly confident out of either of those two. I do like Lipski in this one because I feel like she does have a more developed ground game, but if she's on her back, you have to worry. I wouldn't worry against Antonia Shevchenko because her on her back in an MMA fight, not that great. So, you're sticking with Shevchenko?
I still think she got it.
I'm going to stick with Ariane Lipski. We disagree. Fender Jazz saying go Habs go. And Troy Struger saying Jake Allen is brutal. Stanley Cup champ.
His dad was my gym coach.
Stanley Cup champ. And Aaron Milner saying Lipski didn't make weight easily. I know she didn't. Saeed hanging out in the super chat. We appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Now, Matt, let's get into this fight. And overall, throughout the week, we release the full card picks on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays, the individuals come out. This video was by far the most popular on the entire card. You have Joaquin Buckley. Now, Matt, can you recreate your Pong game?
Nah. Great song. Not really.
Still. So, Joaquin Buckley taking on Jordan Wright. And it's an interesting fight because Jordan Wright, on his way up, fought not great competition. No. And then he made the UFC and had a nice win over Ike Villanueva. And the Fury FC guys lately really haven't had a good run. Like Anthony Ivy, poor Anthony Ivy, 2 fights in the UFC, and Ike Villanueva, 2 fights in the UFC, more than I'll ever have. But overall, Jordan Wright picks up a really big win there. That fight against Anthony Hernandez, tough to really get a read off of. I know it ended up in no contest. Anthony Hernandez ran away with that win. So you have Joaquin Buckley that lost to Kevin Holland in a fight that was weird.
Very.
And he lost it. And now Kevin Holland's fighting the number 4 ranked middleweight. Joaquin Buckley in a fight with Impa Kasanganay that was halfway competitive until Impa decided to catch that kick and hold on for a little bit longer. And now he's on a highlight reel for the rest of the days, the end of days. So overall, Matt, what is your take on this one here? Because it is a tough one. I know we talked about it. If you look over on Tapology, it's 70% for Buckley and 30% going with Jordan Wright. What's your scoop on this one?
Okay, if you're going to break down Joaquin Buckley's UFC career, I think you have to get rid of both finishes. The one against him and the one in which he got against Impa Kasanganay. And I know that sounds weird, because if a guy got knocked out in his first fight and then had one of the greatest knockouts ever in his second fight, you probably put a lot of stock into that. But when you're looking at him, the performance against Kevin Holland up until he got finished, yes, Kevin Holland sort of played with him, but I thought that there were some good moments from Buckley. I thought his boxing looked all right. I did like his aggression in that fight, because if you're coming in on short notice against a guy like Kevin Holland who can go 3 easy rounds, I think that's what you have to do. You got to jump on him early. So he tried doing that. It didn't work. He gets finished. No big deal. You lost to Kevin Holland, like we mentioned. Kevin Holland's a guy who, he's not in the top 15 yet. I know he has that opportunity against Jack Hermansson to even jump into the top 5 potentially. He's well on his way there. He could lose to Jack Hermansson. He could knock him out in the first 10 seconds. But either way, Kevin Holland is going to be in the top 15 for a while, so losing to him, no shame in that. He beat Impa Kasanganay in a fight that I thought he had won every round up until he got the finish. And I picked Kasanganay in that fight. I really thought Impa was going to have his way with Joaquin Buckley. And for Buckley to go out there and not only outstrike Impa Kasanganay, but to not get backed up against the cage. I know that's a weird thing to point out, but Impa Kasanganay has this weird kind of pressure to him in his UFC fights, or just in his fights in general, where he's great at backing you up against the cage. And yes, some of his fights are a little boring because of it, but he's really good at cage presence and dominance. Joaquin Buckley wasn't playing those games at all. And of course, we do have to speak to Fight IQ. I know James Krause might disagree with me on this one, but for Joaquin Buckley to be able to realize, okay, he caught my kick, he's done this a few times now, let's just throw the craziest thing you've ever seen. And then, of course, he lands it. So I don't think you can talk a lot about the finish in that fight, but what was the performance up until the finish? He looked great. His boxing was good, his striking looked really good, and he had really good cardio in it too. So Joaquin Buckley, I don't think he is just a hype job because of that crazy knockout. And I don't think you can call him a scrub either, because a lot of people like to throw that around too, because he lost to Kevin Holland. I think he's a good prospect who has the potential to maybe not be a top 15 for life guy, but I do think Joaquin Buckley can be a guy in the future who can give those, 25 to 12 guys a really hard fight.
You know what would be a really good fight, and I'm not just joshing here? Joaquin Buckley, Uriah Hall. I think that would be a good fight.
Uriah Hall kills him, but
I like that. But overall, there was a comment up ahead that I really wanted to kind of highlight on. It was by Limitless Music saying Buckley's hype train that Wright simply isn't good enough to stop.
I can't disagree with that, really.
Yeah.
Jordan Wright could win this fight. This fight could be one of those Jordan Wright drops Joaquin Buckley with a straight right in the first 10 seconds. Buckley gets up, drops Jordan Wright, and then they just kind of have one of those knock him down, drag him out type of wars. So it could go that way, but I do think Joaquin Buckley is going to get the finish. The UFC knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, Joaquin Buckley over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 374 votes going with Buckley, and then 139 going with Wright. That's good for 73% on Joaquin Buckley. And overall, it should be a really good fight, Matt, and I'm really looking forward to it. So we move on to our featured prelim. Brandon Moreno taking Brandon Royval. And Matt, if there's anything I know on this card, if I can be as crazy as I want to be, Matt, a Brandon is gonna win. One of these Brandons is gonna win. You can take that to the bank unless it's a draw, and hopefully it isn't. So I think that one of these Brandons will win. But overall, which
Really?
Brandon? I think it's very difficult. Now, at the start of the week, we both had Brandon Royval to get the win. He's a very, very good finisher. We know that. We've seen that in his first 2 UFC fights. The really telling fight for me, you can say maybe Wash, but Tim Means. Tim Means is still a competitive fighter in this division. And overall, Brandon Royval went in there. No scrambles for
Tim
Means.
Elliott, not Tim Means.
I meant to say Tim Elliott.
Tim Means would beat the brakes off Brandon Royval.
No time for Mr. Tim Elliott. He was all over it. Submitted Tim Elliott. How wild is that? It was amazing.
Figueiredo did.
And then he had a really good fight against Kai Kara France. Now, Brandon Royval, that's what I can say for him so far. LFA champ. Took on good competition in LFA. You look at one of those losses, Casey Kenny. He's now the next big thing at bantamweight. Brandon Moreno has been there and done that. He's still a very, very young fighter, only having just turned 26. And this is a guy that can do everything very well. What do you make of this fight? And again, are you changing your pick? What are you thinking here?
Okay, I need a second to really think about this fight because I'll be honest, I think Brandon Moreno is more likely to win this fight than not. The odds don't make any sense though. The fact that Royval is almost a 2-1 dog, or at least was at one point this week to Brandon Moreno, is a little wild just because Brandon Royval can do a lot of what Brandon Moreno does, but I'd argue he's the more not proven finisher, but he's definitely the more likely to get a finish in this fight. What do we know about Brandon Moreno? The scramble's phenomenal. His ground game, really good. And I think the draw against Askarov proved that. Now, you're probably thinking, well, he didn't even win that fight. He probably should have, if we're being honest. But the fact that he was able to out-grapple a guy like Askarov, and we had never seen that really up until, well, we've just never seen that. And again, maybe you guys aren't as familiar with Askarov. I know Craig was and still is really high on him. But for Brandon Moreno to out-grapple a guy like that really tells you a lot about his ground game. Thing is, though, Brandon Royval's also amazing on the ground. And this is going to be one of those weird fights because can Brandon Royval knock out Brandon Moreno? Without a doubt. I think he can knock out pretty much anyone at 125. Can he submit Brandon Moreno? Probably. Can Brandon Moreno do the same things to him? Yeah, and that's what's so crazy about this. Now, I'm not going to say Brandon Moreno submits Brandon Royval. I do think Brandon Royval, at least defensively, will be able to avoid a lot of the big submission threats of Brandon Moreno. But Brandon Moreno can stay on top. He can damage you, with ground and pound. Like, he can really drain you with his top game and top pressure. So if Brandon Moreno can really land volume-heavy attacks and start to go to the takedown early and just make Brandon Royval work, because Brandon Royval, not a lot of guys are taking him down in the UFC. He is wicked on the ground. He could snatch a neck if you go for a takedown. He's absolutely filthy. But Brandon Moreno, if he can wrestle, take him down, make him work back up to his feet, just really test the cardiovascular of Brandon Royval, I think Moreno can have a very successful fight. I don't think many guys in the division can keep up with his output over 3 rounds, much less 5. And let's be honest, when Perez was given the title shot, I'm sure I'm not the only hipster out there who was like, hey, Brandon Moreno definitely deserved that instead. So I think this is a very dangerous fight for Moreno. I think Royval has so many different ways to win, but you can say the same thing about Moreno. That's why this isn't just fight of the night. This could be fight of the month. I think this fight's going to be so good. I can't stress that enough. I know I told Craig earlier today that I might be changing my pick to Brandon Moreno, but I'm going to stick with Brandon Royval. I do think the power on the feet will get to Moreno eventually. We saw that in the Pantoja fight. Moreno can kind of get into this weird, like, really knockoff Kirkland brand, kind of Dominic Cruz movement, but he's just not great at it yet. We saw that a lot in the Pantoja fight, so if he can avoid that and use the striking that we saw against Kai Kara France, I think Brandon Moreno can eke out a decision. But more likely than not, I do see the power of Royval getting to Moreno, and eventually he'll be able to dominate him.
Drew asking what we're sipping on. It's a Mountain Dew Kickstart. It's a pop and popcorn type of fight. But overall, again, Brandon Moreno is such a fun fighter to watch. Brandon Royval, a guy that's such a submission threat, but he can also get it done on the feet all of a sudden. And if you look at some of the losses, again, decision loss to Pantoja, decision loss to Perez, and he's beaten Jussier Formiga, Kai Kara-France, Michael Perez over with LFA, the comeback fight, and then that draw, like you had said, against Askar Askarov. Ray Sanders hitting us up in the super chat with $4.99.
Thank you, Ray.
FMP brothers, almost as much fun to watch as the fights. Keep it up, man. FMP's better than ESPN is what Phoenix Grave is saying.
Tell them.
Tell them. Give the boys a call up. If we look at the picks at Fight Night Picks, the Fight Night Picks fans are insane. 327 total picks for Brandon Royval. 288 for Brandon Moreno. That's good for 63% going with Brandon Royval. I'm also going with Brandon Royval as well. Arno Lorenz saying, LOL, this isn't a pop and popcorn kind of fight. Gotta have some action on this one. Maybe you do. I'm just looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good one. So, we got about 25 minutes left. We got to rip through some of these, and this will be a fight that we rip through. Paul Craig, Shogun Rua, number 2. Crazy that we're getting a rematch. Drawn the first fight. You had, 28-28, 29-28, 29-28. It is a draw. We have a super chat from Sean McMinn hitting us up with a $1.99. You want a bit of behind the scenes? I don't know. That's what the picture is. Behind the scenes, I just put up a poster in the office of UFC Moncton. There's a little bit of behind the scenes going with that. Pretty cool stuff, right? You wanted it. Overall, Shogun Rua Paul Craig is an interesting fight. They held Paul Craig back, and it was like the security guy Steve grabbed him by the small of the waist and just kind of pulled him back, but then they set each other up again. I've got Shogun. Now, MMA on Point saying you disagree with what?
I'm guessing they have Brandon Moreno. And again, the fight's so close that it really could go one of two ways. Brandon Moreno could out-volume him, could win by decision. I just don't see him finishing him. That's the issue. And I can see Royval finishing Moreno.
And I can see Paul Craig finishing Shogun by submission. Shogun, again, we talked about it. It's the Thiago Santos black belt, and I worry about his cardio in a 3-round fight, and I didn't like the fight against Little Nog. It pulled at my heartstrings because, again, we get into MMA for John Jones, GSP, Shogun, and Lyoto Machida, and Shogun's still fighting in the UFC. So you got to kind of roll with your guy.
It's wild that Lyoto's probably doing the best out of all those guys right now.
Could win a belt someday, but yeah, I got Paul Craig in this one. I'm not changing the pick.
Yeah, so basically, Shogun could win until I saw Shogun's last fight, and he looked like the oldest man alive. And I don't just mean, like, fighting. I just mean, you could have told me Mauricio Shogun Rua was 79 years old, and I would have believed you. He was very slow in that fight, and you could tell that Father Time just came up, and it was like, hey, guess what? I know pride never dies, but pride's starting to die. And I think Shogun, this is going to be the last nail in the coffin. I don't see this being his big, like, oh, this isn't going to be his Soa Paleli over Bigfoot Silva. Shout out to earlier, but I don't see him beating Paul Craig. Paul Craig pulls guard a lot, and if he pulls guard and just lays on the ground for about 3 minutes and 2 rounds, maybe Shogun can win, but I really doubt that's how the fight's going to go.
All right, Matt, so we're both going with Paul Craig in this one. The Fight Night Picks fans, 74% going with Paul Craig, 26% going with Shogun Rua. So move into our next fight, Cynthia Calvillo. She was at Team Alpha Male, then she was at American Kickboxing, now she's at Extreme Couture. That feels like it's going to be the future at Extreme Couture, always adding a couple of things into her game, a couple of wrinkles. I listened to on Morning Combat, Rashad Evans breaking down the fights with Luke Thomas. Rashad Evans had some really nice things to say about Cynthia Calvillo. Maybe she was more of a finisher at the start of her career, but she continues to add those wrinkles, and she can definitely pick up a win 100%. Now, Matt, we look at this one, and it's difficult because we were split on this at the start of the week. You had Chookagian, I had Cynthia Calvillo. Garrett hitting us up in the super chat with a $9.99, and you got Chookagian. You're feeling it.
Garrett's gonna like what I'm about to say.
This is one of those tough ones. Odin Chookagian decision 3-1.
Okay. Let me give my breakdown quick, just because Caitlin Chookagian as the winner is fresh in people's mind. I think the footwork is going to give Cynthia Calvillo a lot of trouble, and Craig's pretty hard on Cynthia Calvillo is going to win, but even he can agree with me on this. It's going to take her time to close the distance to at least try to take Chookagian down. Yes, Cynthia Calvillo could land more strikes on the feet. She's not going to win a decision based on the striking against Caitlin Chookagian, because Caitlin Chookagian is the queen of winning split decisions. Going, ha ha, front kick. And then, yes, they don't really land or they're glancing shots, but to the judge, they're all still landing. And Cynthia Calvillo, listen, someone has said earlier Sean Strickland's living rent-free in my mind. Maybe he is, because I'm about to bring him up. Sean Strickland looked really good against Jack Marshman. And yes, it's good to look good against Jack Marshman, but it's really hard for me to get sold on you by beating a guy like that. People are not going to like this, but it's really hard for me to get excited when your biggest win is Jessica Eye. Because Jessica Eye, yes, she fought for a title, but I think we can all agree that if you just look at her skill set, she'd be one of the weaker title challengers, just regardless of any weight class in the UFC. I think Jessica Eye is probably at that lowest tier of title challengers. Now, can Cynthia Calvillo win? Yes. If she gets her down, I think she is quite a bit better on the ground. But Katlyn Chookagian is no scrub by any means. We saw that in the Antonina Shevchenko fight. And does that mean that Shevchenko's terrible on the ground? Kind of. Does it also mean Katlyn Chookagian is showing improvements in her grappling? Of course she is. And with the footwork, I think she can win rounds against Calvillo. Yes, Calvillo can take her down. Yes, Calvillo can control her from on top. But if Calvillo goes out there and tries to just straight box her like she did a lot against Jessica Eye, I don't really see her landing a lot. I do see the movement of Chookagian giving her problems. So I'm just going to simplify this fight for me. Can Chookagian stay on her bike for 2 rounds while Calvillo chases her? If she can do that, she'll win 2 rounds to 1, probably a split decision because, of course, it's Katlyn Chookagian. Can Cynthia Calvillo win this fight? Yes, of course she can. But for the underdog odds, I really like Katlyn Chookagian.
And I can see that too. Trent Bossingham saying, I'm back, boys. Here's your lineup. You have, let's see, Figueiredo, Royval, Rodriguez, Shevchenko, Valentina, Stoltzfus, and Wright. Have a good one. Wright's a tough one, but that's a tough fight to try and figure out. What else do we have? Lipski, easy dog. Chookagian looked terrible at weigh-ins. Just talking retirement. Yeah, but she did that before her last fight, right? Hey. Matt the Mick hitting us up, $9.99 for the pop fund. We can afford more Kickstarters. Maybe if somebody knows an energy drinks sponsor that maybe they work with one. Hey, hit the boys up. Buy some merch too. But overall, with this fight, Chookagian Calvillo, it is close. It's a lot closer than those odds may seem, and I keep saying that on and on. But this is one of those ones where Chookagian or plus 200 just feels weird. I know there's probably a lot of hangover from last week. Matt D hitting us up in the super chat. There's a lot of hangover from last week where Katlyn Chookagian, she got finished by Jessica Andrade, that hit to the body. It is. Jesus, sup hipsters, saying sup hipsters again. But if I look over on Topology, 64% of voters at Fighting Picks on Instagram, 64% of voters going with Cynthia Calvillo. I'm also going with Cynthia Calvillo. I think if she pushes a pace, and it's just able to kind of control Katlyn Chookagian. That's easier said than done. That's a lot easier said than done. I don't like Chookagian's career averages and takedowns for and against. She's about, 41% takedown defense. But it has improved later on in her career.
It's the one sport where stats don't matter, but it's all good.
I still like Calvillo in this one. So, we get into our next one, and let us know what you're thinking here. Sam Stern with the hashtag FreeCraig in the super chat. I appreciate you as well. And maybe one day, I look at this fight, Matt. Mike Perry, Tim Means, and I didn't get a chance to put up the asterisks next to the weigh-in, but hey, let's do it both in unison. We dab, and this fight is going to be a weird bucket of muscles, Matt. This is going to be such a weird fight because Mike Perry missed weight, and then he dabbed, and he had all those pictures of eating food on the internet, and then he showed up and talked about not being able to weigh in, and then he tweeted about it, and everybody thought it was going to be fake.
Then he missed weight by 5.5 or 4.5 pounds.
Oh man, it makes me so mad. We both picked Tim Means at the start of the week. I'm not gonna change my pick.
I'm more confident in my pick. I can say that openly. Now, I know that a few years ago there was a stat that came out and it was, fighters who miss weight over normally win. It's not actually true. Normally it does kind of even itself out, especially if you look at the odds. But in this fight, Mike Perry, who is not a big 155 or 170er at all. He is quite the small welterweight because you look at him matched up with a lot of guys. Yes, he's kind of broad across the shoulders, but he's much shorter. Making the weight shouldn't be that crazy. Now, again, that's much easier for us to say sitting here, but Mike Perry is a guy who's made it before, has never come out and had these crazy weight cutting stories like you hear from some other guys like Uriah Hall before the Vitor Belfort fight. There's a good example. Tim Means is not the guy who you want to test out your new corner woman and your best friend and your kind of weird training situation. It's just a very odd situation surrounding Mike Perry. And you know what's really easy to pick? Tim Means, because I know what I'm going to get from him. I'm going to get crazy elbows. I'm going to get that, like, New Mexico version of the Stockton slap. And you're going to get a very entertaining fight. Could Tim Means get clipped? Of course he could. But we need to all be very honest with ourselves. I don't think Mike Perry's this, like, dangerous knockout artist by any means. I think he's a good striker. I think if he catches you clean, he can put you down. But he fights like Vanderlei Silva, where he just throws everything behind every punch. So it's kind of hard to say that, oh, Mike Perry can knock out anyone. He can if he catches you clean, but again, he has to wind up so much. And when he fights those upper echelon guys, like the Santiago Ponzinibbio's, like the Jeff Neals, you really see the holes in his striking. Now, I think the Jeff Neal fight's a pretty good one to look at because Jeff Neal does everything Mike Perry does, just quite a bit better at this stage in his career. Jeff Neal's sort of... He's that 2013 Tim Means, you know? He's working his way up the rankings. He's got great kicks, super good striking. Tim Means can do some of that stuff. Of course, he won't be as good at it. His speed's diminished, as his career's progressed. But, like, again, it's hard for me to pick against a guy who, he has good volume, he has a good submission game, he has good striking. He's just an all-around, really well-rounded fighter. And Mike Perry is going to be forced to play the striking game with him, and I really don't see him catching him with a big shot.
Matt, we're almost to 1,100 people watching the show, which is absolutely insane. I saw a couple people up there saying, toss up the like. Jesus saying, hit the likes, boys. Hit the likes.
Thank you.
And we really do appreciate it. It's absolutely insane where this channel's gone since the start of the year. And overall, Matt, we look at the picks on this fight. 332 total picks at Fight Name Picks on Instagram for Tim Means to 198 for Perry. That's good for 63% on Tim Means. And Matt, I'm not changing my pick on this one. I said it at the start. It is a tough one. And again, an extra 4.5, 5 pounds for Mike Perry is maybe... a little bit extra in it. I know Tim Means, again, looked pretty good against Laureano Staropoli, and that was pretty interesting for me as we dropped a couple of frames, which isn't good. So let's rip through our final picks for this one and really get into it. We have Valentina Shevchenko taking on Jennifer Maia. Damien saying best MMA channel on YouTube. Been watching for a while.
We have the best community too, so thank you guys for showing up to all these live chats. Like, this is amazing.
That's actually true. I mean, it's been a crazy year. I gotta say that. And just before we continue on, we do really appreciate you. And MMA on Point too. We appreciate you. And I know everybody out there is already checking them out. Now, if we look into our co-main event, Matt, Valentina Shevchenko, Jennifer Maia, there have been favorites, and then there's Valentina Shevchenko. Matt, they always say on those YouTube promos, and they have it for this one, that Valentina Shevchenko is the best flyweight fighter of all time.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with it. Nico Montano might have something to say.
You need to stop with that.
Valentina Shevchenko's the best one out there. So we look at this one. If Jennifer Maia is going to win, if Shoot the Box is going to come out here, how is this going to happen for her?
I mean, if Valentina falls down a flight of stairs, if she can't make it to the arena, I don't see any way for Jennifer Maia to win. I know 99% of the time when you do have a massive underdog, there's at least one thing that, okay, maybe if they get this Hail Mary, they can win. Jennifer Maia's Hail Mary is her jiu-jitsu in this fight, but I don't really see the opportunity for her to use it. I mean, Kayla Chookagian is a brown belt under the Danaher Death Squad, and Valentina Shevchenko immediately got into crucifix on her like it was nothing and beat the brakes off her. So it is really weird, especially with Jennifer Maia. I saw Craig was reading me a comment earlier where someone was like, oh, Jennifer Maia could be like TJ Dillashaw against Henan Barao, and we might see this whole new version of her, and she's not really getting the respect she deserves. If you think Jennifer Maia is showing up striking like TJ Dillashaw, I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's just not going to happen. She has okay striking, but she has jiu-jitsu okay striking, where she's just going to run forward, blitz, and if she can get her hands around you, she'll go for the takedown. That works against those non-elite fighters, if you will, and you can submit people off your back like she did Calderwood, of course, but Joanne Calderwood's not near the grappler that Valentina Shevchenko is, and she's not nearly the wrestler either, so Valentina can just keep this on the feet. You know what, I'll go this far. Jennifer Maia could start this fight in full mount, and I don't think she'd win. Like, that's how confident I am with Valentina Shevchenko. She's better pretty much anywhere, and she's way faster and stronger.
And I mean, maybe we have the Shanna Dobson, Maria Agapova wild switch. I just don't see it here. I'm going with Valentina Shevchenko to get the win. So, Matt, we look at our main event of the evening, Deiveson Figueiredo, Alex Perez. It's been decisive. A lot of people are saying, look at Alex Perez's leg kicks. What do you think here?
Alex Perez, he's not going to win this fight. I think Figueiredo is going to hold this belt for a very long time. And if you listen to a lot of what Deiveson's been talking about up until this fight, he's talking about, oh, well, with the sort of added revenue coming with the champ, he can invest a lot more money into his training camp, into himself, really. So you already have the best guy in the division who's now sort of reignited his love, if you will, for MMA. Not his love, but he's been able to really get the resources that he deserves into his training, into his fitness. And if he can make weight comfortably throughout the rest of his career, I don't see many guys who can beat Davison Figueiredo in this. I know Alex Perez has decent leg kicks. I know he should be able to. Well, maybe he can be able to kind of test the cardio of Figueiredo, drag him late. Davison Figueiredo knocks things dead when he touches them, though. And it's not like his submission game isn't a threat. Like, Davison Figueiredo, the Tim Elliott fight's a good example. Tim Elliott went for one takedown and immediately got guillotined by Davison Figueiredo. So I don't see anywhere that Alex Perez is his massive advantage. Maybe he can outgrind Figueiredo for a decision, but that's really the only path to victory I see for old Alex Perez.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Perez has good wrestling. We know that coming out of Team Oyama. And I know listening to that conversation with Luke Thomas and Rashad Evans, the fact that they were saying, hey, Colin Oyama's been through such an evolution of MMA. He was with, who was he with? Rampage Jackson at one point of his career. You look at it now, I mean, you see Alex Perez. I mean, Brandon Moreno was hanging out kind of with some of those guys, with Louis Smolka as well. We got the shout out there from Dream Team MMA. Shout out from Amsterdam to Canada. Love the German accent also. Ikaisa Craig. Ich liebe in Canada. Now, Matt, that's about all the jiu-jitsu I've got for you. We got about 10 minutes left, says Billy Hazelton. So overall, we'll give you a pick in this one, and then we'll go back through the entire card. I've got Davison Figueiredo. I like the fact that he decided to parlay all the money that he made here recently into helping out and working in his camp. And I didn't check in, and I should have, to see if it was actually Bruno Silva that he was lifting at the beach when he was going through his Apollo Creed montage with people watching in the background. But overall, Davison Figueiredo really playing it smart and realizing this is a long game, and if I want to be in it, especially at 32, I have to invest in myself. I like that out of Figueiredo. All kinds of finish opportunities, implied odds hitting us up with the $10 in the super chat. We appreciate you. I see a hello from Fredericton. Good old Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. So Matt, let's rip through this entire card. Send everybody home happy. Exactly. Toss us a like and a sub if you haven't already. We do appreciate you. Matt, let's get into it. We've got Louis Cosce taking on Sasha Palatnikov. Matt, I'm going with Cosce.
Cosce all day.
Our next fight, Kyle Daukaus taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going Stoltzfus. I'm not changing it. That's one of those ones where, listen, I can definitely see the value in Kyle Daukaus. He's the second biggest mover this week at 52% on best fight odds. It is what it is, but I'm going to go with Stoltzfus. In our next fight, Alan Jouban taking on Jared Gooden. This is another one. We called it a pop and popcorn fight. And a little bit inside baseball. We make picks for all these fights. Some of them are really hard. This is one of them, but again, we're fight night picks, so we have to. I'm going Jouban.
All day, Alan Jouban. The hitability of Gooden concerns me quite a bit.
Brendan hitting us up with the $10 in the super chat. We appreciate you. Keep doing it, because that chat's going to keep moving. Daniel Rodriguez, Nicholas Dalby. I'm going with Daniel Rodriguez in a possible fight of the night.
Oh, yeah. Daniel Rodriguez, again, Nicholas Dalby, we don't really know where his durability is. Not the guy you want to test it against, an old D-Rod. So, Daniel Rodriguez all day.
Matt, our next fight, we have Antonina Shevchenko taking on Ariane Lipski. I believe we're both still split on this one. Green King hitting us up. How's it going?
What's up?
I've got Lipski.
I got Shevchenko. It's not the popular pick. It's not my most confident pick, but I still got Shevchenko.
All right, Matt. We'll continue on to our next fight. We got Joaquin Buckley taking on Jordan Wright. Probably going to be a finish in this one. I've got Joaquin Buckley.
I have Joaquin Buckley as well. I know a lot of people are going to like it. They think he's all hype, and maybe he is, but he's still going to get over Jordan Wright.
All right, we both have Buckley in our next fight. Brandon Moreno taking on Brandon Royval. Fight of the night. Another one, especially in your feature prelim. One of the Brandons is going to win. One of the Brandons is probably going to get a title shot. Which Brandon are you going with?
I've been flip-flopping on this a lot, just to be open, but I'm still going to pick Royval. I think he has the higher chance of finishing Moreno. I do think his cardio is going to be able to last through the three. It should be a really fun fight, though. I'm very excited.
Billy Hazelton hitting us up with the super chat. Appreciate you. I can definitely see a method of victory for Brandon Moreno. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but I'm sticking with the pick of Brandon Royval. Move into our first fight on the prelims. Paul Craig taking on Mauricio Shogun Hua. I'm going with Scotland's Paul Craig.
I agree. You want to cheer for Shogun, but again, after seeing him after that last performance, it's probably not going to happen.
All right, Matt. We move into our next fight. Cynthia Calvillo taking on Caitlin Chookagian. There's value on Chookagian. I'm going Cynthia Calvillo.
I got Chookagian. Again, I like the value. I like her footwork. I think it'll be a good fight. And of course, I see a path to victory for Calvillo. She's 2-1 favorite for a reason, but I do think Chookagian's got this.
We move into our next fight. We have Mike Perry taking on Tim Means. Not an easy one to try and call, especially with Mike Perry missing weight, but too many question marks around Perry. I'm going Means, sticking with the pick earlier on from this week.
Hopefully Means by like one of those great like combos that he hits, like slap his glove and then elbow him. But no, I think Tim Means has got this. Mike Perry, if he loses, like might be up for old platinum.
All right, Matt. We look at our next fight, our co-main event. Will it be Ann Stiller and New?
we all know what it's going to be. It's going to be Ann Still.
Matt's going in still. Big, fan of Valentina Shevchenko's work. One of the best fighters out there. One of the most entertaining to watch. And if you remember in her fight against, it was Caitlin Chookagian where she threw the spin kick and then an axe kick. Absolute craziness.
Pretty awesome.
And then in our main event, we have Davison Figueiredo take on Alex Perez. And Matt, I'm going with Ann Still in this fight.
I'm going Davison Figueiredo. My way too specific pick. I'll say him by TKO in round 2. I like his chances to get the finish.
So Matt, really looking forward to this card.
Oh,
Hopefully everybody out there enjoys it. We had a bit of a throwback on Wednesday night with our episode of Question Mark Kicks for Bellator 253.
Great.
Hey, if you're a Bellator fan, make sure you check out some of our content coming up. Matt was a part of the media call on Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday, Tuesday, and then you rushed over here. We did the show on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to it. We're making moves, starting grooves before they knew we were gone, to quote the Otara Millionaires Club, which I already did earlier on this week. I'm really looking forward to some of the crazy stuff that we're doing with the channel. And I'm going to throw it to the Fight Night Picks store ad if you missed that. But overall, hopefully you enjoy the fights out there tonight. Appreciate everybody for tuning in and checking out that super chat. Matt, as we always say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it. And thanks for joining us this Saturday for Fight Night Picks Question Mark Kicks. And hey, maybe you didn't know it, but Fight Night Picks, we have a website, fightnightpicks.net. So make sure you check it out. If you missed some of the YouTube content, it's over there. And hey, maybe you don't have enough time to watch some of our shows on YouTube. We also have the various Fight Night Picks podcasts featured on the site, as well as iTunes and Spotify, the latest episodes of Early Stoppage, and the predictions, and soon to be a recap show. And the other way that you can support the boys, check out the store. We got some awesome shirts and hats over there. FightNightPicks.net. I mean, hey, who doesn't need a long sleeve shirt? A couple t-shirts. Maybe you're lacking. Maybe you need to add to the wardrobe. Or maybe you need to check out that Fight Night Picks Under Armour cap. Did I take that picture myself and Photoshop it? You're darn tootin' I did. So check it out, fightnightpicks.net. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.